So, importance of addressing challenges and setbacks effectively. We all have projects and we all have expectations and we all have things that go a bit wonky when we're in our contracting lives. So, let's go on to what we got first. Scope creep. Ah, yes, that little monkey. Even from the earliest days when I was a field engineer, you'd go to someone and they'd go along and you go, right, according to my ticket here, it says that I used to work on EPOS. Your till drawer doesn't open. Okay, replace a spring, easy peasy. And then they go, while you're here, can you la di da da da. Classic scope creep right there. Now, in contracts, more widely, it can have an impact, especially around the world of IR35. So when you do a contract, when you're signing it and reading it and negotiating it, it will say what services are to be delivered. Those services should be a defined list so that you know exactly what the customer expects. You know what you're going to deliver. The customer knows what you're going to deliver. Excellent. But on some occasions, it will be, right, okay, I know that on your thing it says, in fact, it doesn't even say that because the person that you're interacting with on site has not even seen your contract. They'll just say, hey, you're an expert guru in so-and-so, and you're here to do some programming. We know that, but can you also train these people how to program? But hold up, I'm not a trainer. That's not in my spec. Or, whilst you're here, those famous 3 words, can you also do something else? Like write a tender document for us or write a technical sheet. Now, it doesn't matter what it is they come up with, but if it's outside of the services that you've already specified, if your contract is outside of IR35, they're instantly dragging you inside with those requests. The main difference between IR35 inside and outside, from a what you deliver point of view, is that one is a consultant, you're there to deliver specific services. Whereas if you're inside, you're a bum on a seat just to do whatever they want. So if you're outside, it's very important that you keep the scope creep to a minimum, otherwise you might end up paying more tax than you want to. So how do you avoid it? Well, maintain regular communication with the clients and make sure that they know what's expected of you. What is the contract deliverables, what is specified in the contract as the service that you're going to deliver, and make sure that those are clear from the start. I mean, it's okay whilst you're negotiating the contract to ask for more stuff, because then you can say, well, that's fine, I can deliver that as well. That's agreed. It's only when it gets creep after the fact. So someone might say, well, can you do this and can you do that? And it's like, well, yeah, I can do that. But if I do that, I'm going to incur extra costs on my side. Therefore, I need to charge you more on the day rate. And you can't do that after the contract's signed. So get all that stuff agreed upfront with the client and make sure that communication is constant with the client. So moving on, technical issues. So sometimes you can run into some technical things that are slightly beyond your control or beyond the customer's control. And they might say that we want you to fix this other big problem. Now, going away from scope creep, let's just focus on the technical issues at hand. It might be something that's technical that you cannot influence. So let's say that they're running on really old hardware. You remember those days before we went to the cloud? They've got this trusty Linux server with uptime of 1 billion years because they've never dared touch it. And they want you to install some software on it. It's like, oh my god, what could possibly go wrong? Well, a lot could go wrong. So you need to have a plan of attack. What happens when this breaks? Have a testing regime. I mean, if possible, hopefully they've got 2 of these such systems so you can test on one without testing in production, because no one really wants to test in production, right? Sometimes it's just so old you need to say to the customer, have you considered updating this to something more modern, more reliable, more test-worthy, more robust? And if you've got that option, then you can start to implement sort of robust troubleshooting features. Have tests for your software, have tests for the hardware. I'm sure they probably, test it for earthing faults and stuff like that. Well, that's no different on any hardware. So the basic ask here is that if there are some technical issues, then make sure you've got a testing plan or at least a disaster recovery plan. What about budget constraints? Customers love to tell me how much budget they don't have, which is not very useful when they want me to fix a problem. It's like, well, how important is the problem to you, or rather, how important is the solution to that problem to you? Yeah, budget is merely an artificial constraint. Okay, I've got 20 quid in my hand and I can only buy so many beers and so much pizza with it. And it just depends on the balance, right? So this is where the budgeting plan comes in. Let's plan for the budget. We're going to have one beer and a load of pizza, or we're going to have 9 beers and actually no, let's have 10 beers. I know we can get beer for £1 each, but we have 10 beers and no pizza at all. And that's easy to set up at the beginning, the budgeting plan. However, a budget should be, somewhat flexible. I don't mean like to the point where you might as well not have had it in the first place, because it is a guideline and it is your budget or the customer's budget, so they should have the option to change it if the priorities change. Maybe we get halfway through the night and we think actually just having beers is a bad idea. Let's change the budget so that we can have less beer and more pizza. Regularly track and report expenses. When you're buying the beers, you know how much money you've got left. You're tracking how much you've spent and how much you've got left. And maybe you get to the end of the night and you can negotiate with your client for, well, actually, if you want this many beers and this much pizza, you're going to have to increase the budget overall. Again, this is much easier at the beginning, but sometimes you don't have enough information at the beginning to ask. But what you can do is say, we don't have all of the information. There are some unknowns here. Do we have your permission to ask you for more budget? What is your contingency? Is it 10%, 20% over budget based on if we hit any problems or, like I said on the previous slide, technical issues along the way? Almost right up there with budgets is deadlines. And time, like money, can be budgeted for. Now you can go full on Prince 2 reporting, blah blah blah, Gantt charts, and say this is going to happen, then that, then that, then that, then that. But again, that's just a best guess at the beginning of the project. There are going to be unknowns that you don't know what the outcome is. Some stuff might take a longer time, some stuff might take a shorter time. Usually in our industry it's longer, at least twice as long as you expect it to take. But by having a project management system in place, you can track how much your best guess was at the beginning and track how much the actual was. And again, communication with the client is key here. If you think you're going to go over, it's better to tell the customer as early as you can so that they can then change their plans. I was working for one customer who they said, we've got a deadline, it must be done by this date. And to me, that just looked like an arbitrary date. However, when I dug into it a little bit more, it was, well, we're going to release this software on this date, and we've already set up the budget, the adverts, the marketing in order to book television space for this particular day. And so, okay, it wasn't an arbitrary, I guess it is an arbitrary date, but if we were going to miss that date, then the customer needed to know, because then they needed to tell the marketing department to push all of their stuff back. So the more time you can give them to do that, the better. And of course, it increases your relationship. So building resilience, Building resilience is where you need to have the mindset. You're going to get some setbacks. You're going to say, what's your contingency? And they're going to say, we haven't got any. Or can we push this out a little bit longer, because it's going to take a little bit longer than we initially guessed? And they're going to say, nope, we can't do that. So In those situations, all you can do is understand that there's a lesson to be learned here, and make sure that the next time you guess a bit more or guess a bit longer. Or there might be an opportunity to pivot around different skills. If you've got a strong skill set in Python, and maybe the customer says, "Yeah, we've got Python, it's all here," and then you get on site and it's like, "Oh, right, we've got 20% Python and the rest of it's Golang." Then a growth mindset will say, "Well, that's fine. We've seen Golang before. It's not maybe my strongest skill, but we can dig into here and learn it and just crack on through." You have that flexibility. So you need to be able to recover quickly from setbacks and be able to create not only a growth mindset but a problem solving orientation about you, so that you can say, "Well, here's a problem that's just dying to be solved. Let's just fix it and move on." So time management. We touched on this briefly with the deadlines, but there's ways of managing the time. So I mentioned a Gantt chart. I wouldn't recommend that because there's too much guessing involved. But some of the more useful tools that I use, at least now, is like Trello and Asana, whereby they're more Kanban based. So you can, in any project management system, you break the big goal into small goals, into small tasks, and then into subtasks. And therefore, it's easier to break down, set up those dependencies, get stuff in order, and more importantly, work out what can be done in parallel. If you're working on your own, great. Multitasking, not going to do you any favors. But if you're working in a team and you've broken those tasks down, we can say, well, actually, we can do these tasks at once. Or maybe if the customer's budget allows, because there's a tight link between the amount of budget and the amount of time taken. So you can say to the customer, this is one of the times when bringing another person in is going to speed stuff up because we've identified tasks that can be done in parallel. Sometimes you don't have that option. Some tasks have to rely on other tasks and have to be done in a certain order. And no matter how much budget they throw at it, it's still going to take the same amount of time. And so having time management in place will allow you to see those, surface those, and plan those events so that you can do either the stacked up one at a time thing, or the possibility of splitting stuff up and running in parallel. And how do you get stuff done quicker? Well, if the opportunity is there, you can leverage your network. Building your professional network and seeking mentorship and advice from experienced contractors lets other people help you deliver stuff faster. Helps you deliver stuff at all if it's not an area of expertise that you have. And joining industry forums and groups also helps spread that information around. Some people also ask me about, can AI help? And I don't know much about the dairy industry, but I'm not sure that artificial insemination is going to help anybody. But seriously, if you're talking about ChatGPT and things like that, well, they can help. They are a sort of an accelerator, if you like, but often they don't have all of the answers and they're just guessing slightly better than you are. So it's better to ask a professional in that field who knows the definitive answer, and we can work together on those. Continuous learning and development, staying with the same theme, is there are online training courses so you can increase your own skills. Whenever you land on a customer client, you're not truly going to know what you're going to find. I know that engagement started recently and they said, yes, it's running Jenkins and stuff, so you need to know lots about Jenkins. And then they got to site and they're like, well, yeah, Jenkins does this bit, but everything else was written in Python. What we actually needed was Python skills. And so if you've already got that in your tool belt because you've attended workshops and training sessions and you've got a bit of Jenkins and a bit of Python, then you can land running and get that stuff done quickly and on the same timescales that the customer is expecting from you. Sometimes it helps to obtain relevant qualifications and certifications as well. I run a Confident Contractor, and part of that is doing accounts for contracting. And so I've been certifying myself along the accounts side of things so that I know and I'm armed with all the tools that I can do to help you best with that. And client miscommunication. Most things can be solved by talking to the client. And as I said many times in this presentation already, the earlier you talk to the client, the better. Because if they know what you know, then they can fix the problem with you. But when you're talking to them, make sure you use clear and concise language. When you convey information to them, ask them to replay it back to you so you know that they've got the same level of understanding that you have. And if you're employing effective project management tools, you can show them diagrams and plans and views and give them that visual input so they can see what the plan is, what you've done, and what you're doing. And client communication should be regular. I run a daily stand up with my clients so that they know what's going on that day and what happened yesterday. Were there any hiccups, or was there progress, or was there no progress? Doesn't matter what the news is as long as the client's informed, because then they can stay on your side. So you're thinking about going into contracting, you want to know all the other tips and tricks I've got, that's great. Find out what the holes are in your current knowledge by jumping onto this website. It's a little quiz and it'll ask you a series of questions about contracting, not necessarily technical based, but all of the other stuff, the accounts, the raising of invoices and IR35 and things like that. What you really need to know, what the difference is between being a permie, as I say, and a contractor. Jump on there, fill in the questions. It'll give you a little report afterwards, and then you can speak to me afterwards and we can discuss how we can work together. And as always, thanks for joining me, and any questions you have, shove them in the comments and we'll come back to you as soon as we can. Thanks again, see you later.